Anecdotal fallacy. This occurs when someone uses personal experience or isolated examples to make a general claim. Gambler's fallacy. This happens when someone believes that the outcome of a random event is affected by previous outcomes. Black or white fallacy. This occurs when someone presents only two options, as if they are the only possibilities, ignoring any other potential outcomes. Ad hominem. This is when someone attacks the person making an argument, rather than addressing the argument itself. Appeal to authority. This is when someone tries to win an argument by citing the opinion of an authority figure, rather than providing evidence. Straw man. This happens when someone misrepresents or exaggerates an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. False dilemma. This is when someone presents only two options when there are actually more available. Slippery slope. This occurs when someone argues that one action will inevitably lead to a series of increasingly undesirable consequences. Circular reasoning. This is when someone uses their conclusion as one of the premises in their argument. Hasty generalization. This happens when someone draws a conclusion based on insufficient or biased evidence. Appeal to ignorance. This occurs when someone argues that a claim is true just because it hasn't been proven false, or vice versa. Appeal to emotion. This happens when someone tries to manipulate emotions to win an argument instead of relying on facts or logic. Bandwagon fallacy. This occurs when someone argues that because something is popular or widely believed, it must be true or good. Red herring. This is when someone introduces irrelevant information to distract from the main point of the argument. False cause. This happens when someone mistakenly assumes that because two events happen simultaneously or in sequence, one must have caused the other. Equivocation. This occurs when the meaning of a key term changes in the course of an argument. Fallacy of sunk costs. This occurs when someone continues with a course of action because of previously invested resources, such as time, money, or effort, even when those resources are now irrelevant to the decision. Argument from silence. This happens when someone argues that a lack of evidence or response proves their point. Begging the question. This occurs when someone assumes the truth of the conclusion in the premises of the argument. Cherry picking. This happens when someone selectively chooses evidence that supports their argument while ignoring evidence that contradicts it. False analogy. This occurs when someone draws comparisons between two things that are not truly comparable, leading to a faulty conclusion. Moving the goalposts. This occurs when someone continually changes the criteria of an argument or goalpost to avoid being proven wrong. Two wrongs make a right. This occurs when someone argues that something is justified because someone else did something similar or worse. Loaded question. This is a question that contains an assumption that, if answered, implies the truth of that assumption. Argument from authority. This occurs when someone argues that a claim is true because an authority figure or expert says it is. False equivalence. This happens when two situations are compared as if they are similar, when in fact they are not. False consensus. This occurs when someone assumes that their beliefs or opinions are more widely shared than they actually are. Appeal to spite. This happens when someone argues for or against a claim based on their dislike or spite for the person making the claim. Appeal to fear. This occurs when someone tries to persuade others to accept a conclusion by arousing fear or panic. The fallacy of the beard. This occurs when someone argues that because there's no clear line between two extremes, they are the same. Fallacy of ambiguity. This occurs when a statement is unclear or ambiguous, leading to multiple interpretations. Ambiguity fallacy. This occurs when a sentence is structured ambiguously, leading to different interpretations. Composition fallacy. This happens when someone assumes that what's true of the parts must also be true of the whole. Division fallacy. This is the opposite of the composition fallacy. It occurs when someone assumes that what's true of the whole must also be true of the parts. Accident fallacy. This occurs when a general rule is applied to a specific case where the rule doesn't apply. Genetic fallacy. This occurs when someone judges the merit or validity of an idea based on its source or origin, rather than its content. Appeal to tradition. This happens when someone argues that something should be done a certain way because it's how it's always been done. Appeal to novelty. This is the opposite of appeal to tradition. It occurs when someone argues that something should be done a certain way because it's new or modern. Middle ground fallacy. This occurs when it's assumed that the middle point between two extremes must be the correct position. Tu quoque. This is when someone dismisses criticism by pointing out that the critic has done the same thing. Burden of proof fallacy, claiming that an argument is true or false based on the lack of proof. Appeal to nature. This occurs when someone argues that something is good or right because it's natural. Personal incredulity. This happens when someone rejects a claim simply because they can't understand or believe it. Composition and division fallacy. This combines the fallacies of composition and division. It occurs when someone assumes that what's true for the whole must also be true for the parts, and vice versa. No True Scotsman. This occurs when someone redefines a term to exclude counterexamples and protect their argument from being refuted.